Economic depression cannot be cured by legislative action or executive pronouncement. Economic wounds must be healed by the action of the cells of the economic body, the producers and consumers themselves. It is a paradox that every dictator has climbed to power on the ladder of free speech. Immediately on attaining power, each dictator has suppressed all free speech except his own. My country owes me nothing. It gave me, as it gives every boy and girl, a chance. It gave me schooling, independence of action, opportunity for service and honor. Our strength lies in spiritual concepts. It lies in public sensitivities to evil. Our greatest danger is not from invading armies. Our dangers are that we may commit suicide from within by complaisance with evil or by public tolerance of scandalous behavior. Never worry about anything that is past. Charge it up to experience and forget the trouble. There are always plenty of troubles ahead, so don't turn and look back on any behind you. Every collectivist revolution rides in on a Trojan horse of emergency. It was the tactic of Lenin, Hitler, and Mussolini. In the collectivist sweep over a dozen minor countries of Europe, it was the cry of men striving to get on horseback. And emergency became the justification of the subsequent steps. This technique of creating emergency is the greatest achievement that demagoguery attains. The great liability of the engineer compared to men of other professions is that his works are out in the open where all can see them. His acts, step by step, are in hard substance. He cannot bury his mistakes in the grave like the doctors. He cannot argue them into thin air or blame the judge like the lawyers. He cannot, like the architects, cover his failures with trees and vines. He cannot, like the politicians, screen his shortcomings by blaming his opponents and hope the people will forget. The engineer simply cannot deny he did it. If his works do not work, he is damned. To go fishing is the chance to wash one's soul with pure air, with the rush of the brook, or with the shimmer of sun on blue water. It brings meekness and inspiration from the decency of nature, charity toward tackle makers, patience toward fish, a mockery of prophets and egos, a quieting of hate, a rejoicing that you do not have to decide a darn thing until next week. And it is discipline and the equality of men, for all men are equal before fish. If we could have but one generation of properly born, trained, educated, and healthy children, 1,000 other problems of government would vanish. The president is not only the leader of a party, he is the president of the whole people. He must interpret the conscience of America. He must guide his conduct by the idealism of our people. The president is not only the leader of a party, he is the president of the whole people. He must interpret the conscience of America. He must guide his conduct by the idealism of our people. When we are sick, we want an uncommon doctor. When we have a construction job to do, we want an uncommon engineer. And when we are at war, we want an uncommon general. It is only when we get into politics that we are satisfied with the common man. There are only 3 ways to meet the unpaid bills of a nation. The first is taxation. The second is repudiation. The third is inflation. The whole inspiration of our civilization springs from the teachings of Christ and the lessons of the prophets. To read the Bible for these fundamentals is a necessity of American life. It is a thing of the Spirit. Men must be free to worship, to think, to hold opinions, to speak without fear. They must be free to challenge wrong and oppression with the surety of justice. It is a great profession. There is the fascination of watching a figment of the imagination emerge through the aid of science to a plan on paper. Then it moves to realization in stone or metal or energy. Then it brings jobs and homes to men. Then it elevates the standards of living and adds to the comforts of life. That is the engineer's high privilege. Any practice of business which would dominate the country by its own selfish interest is a destruction of equality of opportunity. Government in business, except in emergency, is also a destruction of equal opportunity and the incarnation of tyranny through bureaucracy. Freedom requires that government keep the channels of competition and opportunity open, prevent monopolies, economic abuse and domination. I am willing to pledge myself that if the time should ever come that the voluntary agencies of the country together with the local and state governments are unable to find resources with which to prevent hunger and suffering, I will ask the aid of every resource of the federal government. I have the faith in the American people that such a day will not come. There is no other book so various as the Bible, nor one so full of concentrated wisdom. Whether it be of law, business, morals, he who seeks for guidance may look inside its covers and find illumination. There is no other book so various as the Bible, nor one so full of concentrated wisdom. Whether it be of law, business, morals, he who seeks for guidance may look inside its covers and find illumination. Public health service should be as fully organized and as universally incorporated into our governmental system as is public education. The returns are 1,000-fold in economic benefits and infinitely more in reduction of suffering and promotion of human happiness. Freedom conceives that the mind and spirit of man can be free only if he is free to pattern his own life, to develop his own talents, free to earn, to spend, to save, to acquire property as the security of his old age and his family. While I can make no claim for having introduced the term rugged individualism, I should be proud to have invented it. It has been used by American leaders for over a half-century in eulogy of those God-fearing men and women of honesty whose stamina and character and fearless assertion of rights led them to make their own way in life. The future of nations cannot be frozen, cannot be foreseen. If we are going to accomplish anything in our time, we must approach our problem in the knowledge that there is nothing rigid or immutable in human affairs. History is a story of growth, decay, and change. If no provision, no allowance is made for change by peaceful means, it will come anyway, and with violence. It is well to remember that the office of chief executive is in part a symbol of the nation, and that leaders in a nation may differ in their own house, but they have instant solidarity in the presence of foreign attack. I am convinced that we have re-established confidence. Wages should remain stable. A very large degree of industrial unemployment and suffering which would otherwise have occurred has been prevented. I am firmly opposed to the government entering into any business the major purpose of which is competition with our citizens. For the federal government deliberately to go out to build up and expand a power and manufacturing business is to break down the initiative and enterprise of the American people. It is the destruction of equality of opportunity amongst our people. It is the negation of the ideals upon which our civilization has been based. Bureaucracy is ever desirous of spreading its influence and its power. You cannot extend the mastery of the government over the daily working life of a people without at the same time making it the master of the people's souls and thoughts. Our social and economic system cannot march toward better days unless it is inspired by things of the spirit. It is here that the higher purposes of individualism must find their sustenance. Lots of people committed crimes during the year who would not have done so if they had been fishing. The increase of crime is among those deprived of the regenerations that impregnate the mind and character of the fisherman. An ideal is an unselfish aspiration. Its purpose is the general welfare not only of this but of future generations. It is a thing of the spirit. It is a generous and humane desire that all men may share equally in a common good. Our ideals are the cement which binds human society. While the crash only took place 6 months ago, I am convinced we have passed the worst, and with continued unity of effort we shall rapidly recover. You convey too great a compliment when you say that I have earned the right to the presidential nomination. No man can establish such an obligation upon any part of the American people. My country owes me no debt. It gave me, as it gives every boy and girl, a chance. It gave me schooling, independence of action, opportunity for service and honor. In no other land could a boy from a country village, without inheritance or influential friends, look forward with unbounded hope. My whole life has taught me what America means. I am indebted to my country beyond any human power to repay. What the world needs today is a definite, spiritual mobilization of the nations who believe in God against this tide of red agnosticism. It needs a moral mobilization against the hideous ideas of the police state and human slavery. I suggest that the United Nations should be reorganized without the communist nations in it. It is a proposal based solely upon moral, spiritual, and defense foundations. It is a proposal to redeem the concept of the United Nations to the high purpose for which it was created. It is a proposal for moral and spiritual cooperation of God-fearing free nations. And in rejecting an atheistic otherworld, I am confident that the Almighty God will be with us. A splendid storehouse of integrity and freedom has been bequeathed to us by our forefathers. In this day of confusion, of peril to liberty, our high duty is to see that this storehouse is not robbed of its contents. Let us not forget that the value of this great system does not lie primarily in its extent or even in its efficiency. Its worth depends on the use that is made of it. For the first time in human history, we have available to us the ability to communicate simultaneously with millions of our fellow men, to furnish entertainment, instruction, widening vision of national problems and national events. An obligation rests on us to see that it is devoted to real service and to develop the material that is transmitted into that which is really worthwhile. I believe not only that religious faith will be victorious, but that it is vital to humankind that it shall be. We may differ in form and particulars in our religious faith. Those are matters that are sacred to each of our inner sanctuaries. It is our privilege to decline to argue them. Their real demonstration is the lives that we live. All progress and growth is a matter of change, but change must be growth within our social and government concepts if it should not destroy them. When I decided to go into politics, I weighed the costs. I would get criticism, but I went ahead. So when virulent criticism came, I wasn't surprised. I was better able to handle it. No prosaic description can portray the grandeur of 40 miles of rugged mountains rising beyond a placid lake in which each shadowy precipice and each purple gorge is reflected with a vividness that rivals the original. Progress will march if we hold an abiding faith in the intelligence, the initiative, the character, the courage, and the divine touch in the individual. We can safeguard these ends if we give to each individual that opportunity for which the spirit of America stands. I have on numerous occasions, as you know, expressed my sympathy in the establishment of a national home for the Jews in Palestine, and, despite the setbacks caused by the disorders there during the last few years, I have been heartened by the progress which has been made and by the remarkable accomplishments of the Jewish settlers in that country. Engineering is a great profession. There is the satisfaction of watching a figment of the imagination emerge through the aid of science to a plan on paper. Then it moves to realization in stone or metal or energy. Then it brings homes to men or women. Then it elevates the standard of living and adds to the comforts of life. This is the engineer's high privilege. So far as the personal side is concerned, the victory was to him who lost and the defeat to him who won. I can say that never in the last 15 years have I had the peace of mind that I have since the election. I have almost a feeling of elation. Above all, we know that although Americans can be led to make great sacrifices, they do not like to be driven. Man is still by instinct a predatory animal given to devilish aggression. The discoveries of science have immensely increased productivity of material things. They have increased the standards of living and comfort. They have eliminated infinite drudgery. They have increased leisure. But that gives more time for devilment. The work of science has eliminated much disease and suffering. It has increased the length of life. That, together with increase in productivity, has resulted in vastly increased populations. Also, it increased the number of people engaged in devilment. It is those moral and spiritual qualities which rise alone in free men, which will fulfill the meaning of the word American. And with them will come centuries of further greatness to our country. Our fathers and grandfathers who poured over the Midwest were self-reliant, rugged, God-fearing people of indomitable courage. They asked only for freedom of opportunity and equal chance. In these conceptions lies the real basis of American democracy. They and their fathers give a genius to American institutions that distinguished our people from any other in the world. Menaced by collectivist trends, we must seek revival of our strength in the spiritual foundations which are the bedrock of our republic. Democracy is the outgrowth of the religious conviction of the sacredness of every human life. On the religious side, its highest embodiment is the Bible. On the political side, the Constitution. In its broad aspects, the proper feeding of children revolves around a public recognition of the interdependence of the human animal upon his cattle. The white race cannot survive without dairy products. Fishing is the chance to wash one's soul with pure air. It brings meekness and inspiration, reduces our egoism, soothes our troubles, and shames our wickedness. It is discipline in the equality of men, for all men are equal before fish. 3 qualities of greatness stood out in Woodrow Wilson. He was a man of staunch morals. He was more than just an idealist. He was the personification of the heritage of idealism of the American people. He brought spiritual concepts to the peace table. He was a born crusader. I can at once refute the statement that the people of the West object to conservation of oil resources. They know that there is a limit to oil supplies and that the time will come when they and the nation will need this oil much more than it is needed now. There are no half measures in conservation of oil. The Union has become not merely a physical union of states, but rather a spiritual union in common ideals of our people. Within it is room for every variety of opinion, every possible experiment in social progress. Out of such variety comes growth, but only if we preserve and maintain our spiritual solidarity. I protest that we fans are being emotionally starved and frustrated by long periods of perfect performance of these batteries. Moreover, when there are nothing but strikes and balls going on, you relapse into your worries over the Bank of England or something else. Once the day's work starts, there is little chance to walk, to ride, or to take part in a game. Taking walks or rides early in the morning is a lonesome business, and the inevitable Secret Service guard when the president leaves the White House grounds is not enlivening company. More than 10 million women march to work every morning side by side with the men. Steadily, the importance of women is gaining notably in the routine tasks of industry, but in executive responsibility. I include also the woman who stays at home as the guardian of the welfare of the family. She is a partner in the job and wages. Women constitute a part of our industrial achievement. You will expect me to discuss the late election. Well, as nearly as I can learn, we did not have enough votes on our side. Reports to the Surgeon General represent the final word upon the efficient and devoted sense of responsibility of our people in this obligation to our fellow citizens. Overwhelmingly, they confirm the fact that the general mortality rate, infant mortality rate, epidemics, the disease rate are less than in normal times. There is but one explanation. That is, that through an aroused sense of public responsibility, those in destitution and their children are receiving actually more adequate care than even in normal times. The spark of liberty in the mind and spirit of man cannot be long extinguished. It will break into flames that will destroy every coercion which seems to limit it. But I would emphasize again that social and economic solutions, as such, will not avail to satisfy the aspirations of the people unless they conform with the traditions of our race, deeply grooved in their sentiments through a century and a half of struggle for ideals of life that are rooted in religion and fed from purely spiritual springs. I am interested to learn that a group of distinguished men and women is to be formed to spread knowledge and appreciation of the rehabilitation which is going forward in Palestine under Jewish auspices, and to add my expression to the sentiment among our people in favor of the realization of the age-old aspirations of the Jewish people for the restoration of their national homeland. Every collectivist revolution rides in on a Trojan horse of emergency. It was a tactic of Lenin, Hitler, and Mussolini. The invasion of New Deal collectivism was introduced by this same Trojan horse. In the larger view, the major forces of the Depression now lie outside of the United States, and our recuperation has been retarded by the unwarranted degree of fear and apprehension created by these outside forces. We supported the cooperative movement among farmers. The movement was still young and stubbornly opposed to the commercial distributors. I believed it to be one of the most helpful undertakings, for according to my social theories, any organization run by citizens for their own welfare is preferable to the same action by the government. The party should stand for a constantly wider diffusion of property. That is the greatest social and economic security that can come to free men. It makes free men. We want a nation of proprietors, not a state of collectivists. That is attained by creating a national wealth and income, not by destroying it. The income and estate taxes create an orderly movement to diffuse swollen fortunes more effectively than all the quacks. I returned to the White House after midnight more depressed than ever before. I had long since arranged to attend the World Series in Philadelphia the next day. Although I like baseball, I kept this engagement only because I felt that my presence at a sporting event might be a gesture of reassurance to a country suffering from a severe attack of jitters. I was not able to work up much enthusiasm over the ball game, and in the midst of it I was handed a note informing me of the sudden death of Senator Dwight Morrow. He had proved a great pillar of strength in the Senate, and his death was a great loss to the country and to me.